In this video, I want to talk about API integrations, what an API actually is, how integrations work in Runchat, and most importantly, what to watch out for before you connect one. Then I'll show you a quick example with Notion. So what is an API key? An API is how two pieces of software talk to each other. When you use Notion in your browser, you click buttons and the interface sends requests to Notion servers. An API is that same conversation, but exposed so that other software can do that too. So instead of a human clicking create page, a script or an agent can send a request that says create page, and Notion responds the same way it would for the browser. Almost every modern tool has one: Notion, Google Drive, Slack, Figma, Linear, your bank. If you can do it in the product, there's usually an API that lets another program do it on your behalf. So in Runchat, when you connect a service, you're giving Runchat permission to talk to that service's API on your behalf. The way that permission gets granted is usually through an API key, which is a long string of characters that acts like a password specifically for programmatic access. You generate the key inside of the other service, you paste it into Runchat, and from that point on, Runchat can make requests as if it were you. In Runchat, there's two ways an integration shows up. The first is a first-class integration. These are services we've built direct support for. You can connect once, often through a OAuth flow or managed key, and then you get dedicated nodes and agent tools that know how to talk to that service. If the service's API changes, we will handle that. So the place that lives is if you go into the bottom left account menu, you can see the ability to link accounts. And so this is the integration I was talking about. We have a few options here. You can link Gemini, Fal, Sheets, OpenRouter, etc. And so you're more than welcome to follow the links here and generate a key for those services. And then all you need to do in Runchat is paste that in and hit add. And Runchat will know that that key is available to it. And that's helpful for doing things like reading Sheets or connecting with Gemini. And so these are the accounts that we support by default and have strong integrations for. So the second option is an integration through secret. This is a slightly more technical approach. Basically, if we don't have a first-class integration for a service, you can still use it. You store an API key as a secret and then reference that secret from a code node or in a HTTP request. It's more flexible because you can connect to literally anything with the API. It's also a little bit more work because the agent will probably need to write the integration for you, or you might even want to write the integration yourself. And the responsibility for the scope and safety sits with you. So to show you where those live, if you click on your account menu in the bottom left, you can see the option to manage secrets. Currently, I have no secrets here, but I could add, for instance, test key and give it a value of test. When I provide this, I also need to set an allowed origin. Key can only be used to access those websites. So an example would be to do example.com, and we can add this secret. So the way to reference secrets inside of Runchat is in the same way that you've been referencing parameters or adding previous prompts. In a text field, if I hit tab, it takes me to the prompts menu. If I hit tab again, it takes me to parameters. And again, it will show me credentials and my test key fits in there. This isn't exactly the use case that you would use an API key in, and we'll get to what that looks like in a moment. Before we talk more about API keys, there's 4 things that you need to be mindful of. And this matters especially when you're going through the route of creating your own API key. It's possible to produce long-lived keys. Like a lot of API keys don't expire. So if you create one today and paste it into a tool, it might still work in a year. If it leaks, if someone sees your screen, if it ends up in a screenshot, if a service you gave it to gets breached, that key keeps working until you manually revoke it. So treat API keys like passwords that never rotate themselves. 2 is scope and permissions. When you create a key, the service will often ask what it should have access to. Read only or read and write, all your data or just one workspace. The default is usually everything, and that's almost never what you want. So if the integration only needs to read one database, give it access to that one database, not the whole account. 3 is billing. So a lot of APIs are attached to a billing account, your AWS key, OpenAI, Stripe key. If someone gets that, they can rack up charges. Some services have spend limits, most don't by default. Before you create a key on a billable service, check whether you can set a hard cap, and definitely do it. The last is sensitive information. So think carefully about what the service actually contains: your email inbox, your bank, your contacts. your client work. Giving an integration access to these isn't wrong, but it is a decision, and you need to ask yourself, if the key is leaked, what's the worst that could happen? The short version is minimum scope, use a test or low privilege account when you can, and revoke keys you're no longer using. All right, so let me show you what this looks like in practice. Notion is a good example because it sits on the secrets side. So I'll create a key in Notion and bring that into Runchat as a secret. I've set up an example database in Notion and an example team space. And to create a integration in Notion, you can go to the top left, you can hit settings. Under connections, it's not one of these default ones. You actually need to click this develop or manage integrations, which will take you to an external window. I have a previous one I created. I'm going to create a new integration called test integration. And then you can see here that I have the ability to scope it to a workspace. I'm going to scope it to James's space, and I'm going to create that. I know that there's nothing in this space that could be compromised, so I'll just create this. And now I can configure the internal settings of it. So this is where the secret is, and then I can change its abilities. So right now it would have the ability to read, update, or insert, and I can enable or disable those. And I can also allow it to have information on other users inside of the team. Just to be on the safe side, since I'm the only person in here, I'm just going to click no user information. And then I have the option for content access. So I'm going to give it access to the one page that I have in here, this example database. I'm going to save it. And so it has access to one page, but it can read, update, or insert content into that page. And then I'm going to need to copy this key. So I've copied that key, and now I'm going to save this. And then if I go back to Runchat in the bottom left, I can open manage secrets. I can add Notion key and then the value. And I just Googled this. The website that we need here is api.notion.com. So we will add the secret. And so now you can see it's appeared underneath my other one. Now, just to test this, to now use this API key, I'm going to go to my example database, copy the URL, and then I'm going to use Opus for this. Okay, so it's generated a get schema node and then a write example node. And so I will run this first. Cool, so it's gotten the example database and some of its properties. And now it's going to write an example to that database. So if I go back to Notion, you can see we've got our example item in here, and it did that just using Runchat. So you can see how this can become a powerful feature when used amongst your workflows. Used inside of your workflows, the sky's the limit with how you integrate with the services you integrate, and you can integrate with many in a single workflow. So it's a very powerful capability.